So this video forms morality lesson 3, which is the third lesson into the morality issue and debate, but also the very last video making up the development module. After this, we're just going to focus on revision and assessment and then start the new topic. Today's video is going to focus more on Damon's theory of how we develop a moral self. But before we do that, I just want to check that we've totally understood the previous lesson on Coburg. So what I want you to do, please, is just pause the video. You'll see on the screen I've put the 3 levels of morality as suggested by Coburg with 3 different descriptions. It's just a mix and match for me. I just want you to pause the screen and see if you can match up the keyword with the definition, and the answers are on the next slide. So pause the video for me. And the answers there you can just check. It's just really important that you do understand that although Coburg's theory has 6 stages, the first 2 stages are obviously within each level of morality. So for example, the first level of morality is obviously pre-conventional, so the idea of before conventional morality, which is more your children, focuses on rewards and punishment. So we don't do that because it's bad and we're going to get punished, but we do that because it's good and we're going to get rewarded. Stage 3 and 4 come within conventional morality, which is the young adults really, so following rules of society because you want to be liked, and also understanding that you have to behave and you have to follow what your adults or authority figures are telling you to do because that's how society functions basically. And then your final stages, stage 5 and 6, come within post-conventional morality. And remember that Coburg said only 10% of us would reach this. And that's that understanding of actions being good or bad against a higher level. So not just what society says, but understanding the impact bigger than that really, and having your own decisions about how things should be. Okay, so as promised, this video is focusing on Damon. Damon looks a little bit more at nature and nurture, so we're going to start off making sure that we understand what those key words are, and then we're going to explain what the nativist theories were, and then discuss Damon's theory of developing a moral self. So one of the key ideas that Damon poses at the beginning of his theory is this idea of, are we born with morals or do we learn them from society? And I think it's quite a good opportunity here to just pause the video and reflect on what your thoughts of this are before we go any further. Do you think that we learn our moral behaviour and therefore that's why we know what's right and wrong, or do you think there's an aspect of us that's born with that understanding or that instinct? So again, the idea of nature here is the idea that people behave the way they do because they're a product of their biology and their genes. So they're born the way they are, that's why they behave the way they are. It's in accordance with animal instincts. The idea of preparedness, so you're born with a physiological need to survive, and that need to survive will reflect your behaviour. But basically, nature just means that you are born the way you are, and your actions, your personality, your thoughts, and obviously in this case your morals are a result of your biology, and they're not influenced by your environment. Whereas nurture, we know, is the exact opposite, and this is the idea that people behave the way they do because they are determined by things other people teach them, so what they observe around them and different situations. So nurture is the idea that it's their environment that influences who they are. And their personality and things like that. And obviously nurture explains how we are different because we're shaped by different environments. The reason this is important is there's a long-running debate with all sorts of behaviours as to whether they're nature or nurture. I think we've referenced a few times in lessons the idea of intelligence, IQ, is that nature, is it nurture? It's accepted that certain physical characteristics are obviously nature, but when it comes to psychology, behaviour, personality, the nature-nurture argument is ongoing. You know, are we the way we are because of our biology, or is it our environment that shapes our behaviour? Now, Damon was particularly interested in this when it comes to our moral development, and he discusses how moral development is explained by some and what we call these nativist theories as being in our nature. And nativists here are suggesting that our morality is within our nature. We're born the way we are, hold that emotions are within us. So for example, Damon gives the examples of babies being able to feel empathy more or less from when they're born, and he actually did evidence himself to support this. This idea that emotions that are found within babies are universal, which again suggests this idea of nature, that moral development and our morals, we're born with those and that instinct to be moral. And again, you can link that back to preparedness theory that I mentioned earlier on, that idea that you instinctively know how to behave in situations because you want to survive, and you know that that's the way you've got to survive, so therefore it's an instinct within you. However, he also acknowledges the other side of the argument, which is very much the argument, other side of the argument that Piaget and Coburg put themselves on, this idea of nurture. So the idea that our morals come from our social experiences or our environments, basically, and they develop alongside a child's intellect. And that's, obviously Coburg and Piaget both state levels of moral development that are closely linked to age and to our levels of intelligence. Now, what's interesting here as well is not only do nurture theories show how children are affected by these environment and social influences, there's a lot of evidence that supports this. So, for example, Diana Burmrind, who's a really famous psychologist, actually found that the types of parenting can affect moral development in children as well. So that obviously supports the nurture side of the argument. Now, as a result of this, Damon actually concludes then that our moral identity, and that's basically how somebody commits themselves to their morals, so basically what their moral decisions are, comes from lots of different social influences and can influence a child's experiences. And what he's basically saying then is children have to be exposed to a consistent message about our standards in order for them to develop their moral understanding. So I'm just going to pause the video now. So again, you've done your flip learning on page 27 of your knowledge organizer. The stages are actually at the top of that, but to just make sure that you're clear once you've done your notes, can you please do the match activity that I've put on the Google Drive, just matching up the stage of Damon's ideas with how children develop empathy. And the next slide, I'm going to go through the answers. So if you could pause the video now until you've completed that task. So just checking that you're absolutely okay with these. So Damon is saying that in early infancy, children's feelings towards others are not different from the feelings towards themselves. So that means that there's a global empathy. They don't think about other people's thoughts or feelings. They just concentrate on their own. Now, at ages 1 to 2, children realise that others are upset, and this does distress them, but they don't understand what to do about it. So they don't understand the idea of comfort. They just don't like seeing other babies cry or upset. And sometimes, again, there's this idea of the nature side here, this preparedness. A child will cry if they see another child cry because they think there's a reason to cry. Whereas as we move into early childhood, children learn that others have a different view from their own and might react differently in different situations. And actually, this is where a child learns to be more responsive to somebody's distress. And you might see, a 7 or 8 year old give them a cuddle or say it's going to be okay and say what they think is the right thing to do. And then age 10 to 12 years is where the children start to realise that other people might live in poverty and have difficulties that are different than their own. And they also understand at this point that they might not be able to empathise with those difficulties and those differences, but they do try and understand them. So Damon then uses this to pull this together and say, well, what can help a child develop a moral understanding? And he actually makes some suggestions about what we should be doing. And again, this is where your exam questions are often going to be focused, is some sort of a scenario. And it'll say, what would Damon's advice be, or what theory of morality would suggest as a strategy here. So just look out for that. Damon says that because children who experience different views and ways of looking at things might develop more in a moral sense, we have to make sure that we're giving the children the opportunity to sort out their problems with others. So if two children have an argument, we need to make sure that they sit, that they talk to one another, that they express their feelings, they listen to the feelings of the other child, and we give them that chance to develop their self-control and accept social responsibility. So giving children the opportunity to say sorry, explaining to them why their behaviour is unacceptable or why their behaviour may have upset other people. And again, if you think back of your experiences within school, we do this a lot at school within year 7 and year 8. We'll talk to you about why your behaviour was unacceptable, why it upset you. We'll talk about consequences, we'll talk about choices, and we'll talk about the consequences of those choices. And it's that idea of you developing your own sense of moral identity rather than just doing what we're telling you is right or wrong. You're starting to understand why it's right or wrong and put your own spin on that. So this is the final task now for the issues and debates. Now, to be clear, in paper 1 of all the 5 sections that you studied, each one will be a short answer question. So each section will be short questions on all the topics that you studied, but each topic has always had an issue and a debate. You will only be tested on 1 of the 5 issues and debates on paper 1, and it will always be through section F, which is an essay, and it will always be a 9-mark essay. The problem is we obviously never know which of the 1 of the 5 it's going to be, so you've got to make sure that you revise and understand all 5. There will be no other direct questions apart from the essay on the paper, so you've got to make sure that you're Okay, I don't think that was very clear, was it? Let me try that again. Your essay will only ever be on issues and debates. You will not have an essay on paper 1 on any other aspect of your learning, from memory, social influence, development, the brain, psychological issues. Your essay will always be on the issue and debate that you studied within those sections. Now, last year's essay was on morality. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk you through the question, talk you through the mark scheme, talk you through what we would expect, and then I've collated all of this into a document on Google Classroom, and I then want you to have a go at answering this question and submitting it to me as an essay. So, a woman needs money to help her brother but does not have enough to help him. She steals money from her workplace and gives it to her brother. 3 men from England were asked whether the woman's actions were right or wrong and why. Man A said the woman was right to steal the money because everyone in the world is equal, so money should be given to those who need it. Man B said the woman was wrong to steal the money because she might get in trouble. And Man C said that the woman was right to steal the money because her family might disapprove of her not helping her brother. Assess, and that will always be your command word on the section F on the issues and debates. It will never be anything different than assess how the stages of morality can account for the responses given by the men. Now, we know that the minute you see any sort of scenario question like this on your exam, the first thing we do is annotate and we dissect the keywords within the question. Now, you can see the first word that I've circled there is assess, and we know that an assess question requires you to make a judgment. So you've got to directly answer the question. So how the stages of morality can account for the responses given by the men. So you've got to directly say, this man is in this stage of morality, this man is in this stage of morality, and this man is in this stage of morality, and that's why they've said what they've said. Just to be clear, this 9 marks down here as well, and I'll talk about this more on the second slide, is always built up of 3A01, 3A02 and 3A03. So again, you've got to make sure that we're describing the theories of morality and the stages of morality. We've got to link that to the scenario for your A02, and then we've got to put evaluation about the strengths and weaknesses of these stages of morality in terms of whether they're useful to us in understanding the actions of the men. If we just pick out some other keywords as well that we can see here, I just want to focus on the fact that they're men from England. 3 men have been asked. They always do that on purpose, so that's your little clue in the question here. And they're being asked about whether the woman's actions were right or wrong, so I'm thinking there may be other factors at play here. It's also ringing bells for me that Coburg's research was obviously just men as well, so it's kind of a joint critique here. Man A said the woman was right to steal the money because everyone in the world is equal. Now, to me, that's quite an advanced moral thought. So I'm already thinking that this person is demonstrating kind of post-conventional morality here, because everybody in the world is equal, so money should be given to those who need it. That's a moral statement that goes outside the realms of society, outside what we're deeming right or wrong and what our social norms are. And that's kind of his personal reflection as to how he thinks the world should be run morally. So that is an example there of post-conventional morality straight away, and if my pen worked on the screen I would write that down, but it doesn't. Man B said the woman was wrong to steal the money because she might get in trouble. Now that to me again is quite a low level understanding of morality, so I straight away would be suggesting maybe Man B is younger than the other men that were being asked, because Man B is just talking in terms of consequences, isn't he? Might get in trouble, the idea of punishment, so it's pre-conventional morality there. Man C said that the woman was right to steal the money because her family might disapprove. Well, we know that that one there straight away is talking about societal norms, acceptance from society, obedience to authority. So we know that that's conventional morality, which is obviously the stage that most adults reach. So I've just mentioned this really quickly, but it's really important to make sure that your answer to this question includes all the AOs, so describing, applying and evaluating. If your answer, for example, has no AO3 in whatsoever, you are capped at a level 2. So you can't get, even if it's the best AO1, best AO2 you've ever written, you can't go any further than level 2 if you've missed out that AO. So you've got to make sure that you've got equal amounts of the assessment outcomes within your answer. You know as well as I do that our mark scheme for our level 3, which is our top band of answer here, is requiring you to have accurate and thorough knowledge. So when you're discussing the levels of morality, you've got to use key terms, you've got to be nice and give depth into what you're talking about. You've got to show that you really understand the levels in quite a complex manner. The second one here is your AO2, and it's basically sustained links. So it means that you're not just going to put man A, man B, man C. You're going to talk about the context. You're going to talk about the stealing of the money to help her brother, the fact it was a woman, the fact it was a man, and have logical connections throughout. So again, it's linking to that weave. We're going to have an AO1, AO2, AO3, so that your AO2 is consistent throughout. And then down here, your AO3 is going to have relevant psychological ideas. So we've got our logical chains of reasoning. So we know that our whole structure for this is going to be the Wally weave. Don't forget the Wally weave. So we're going to have AO1, AO2, AO3. It's also got to be balanced. That means that you've got to talk about strengths as well as talking about weaknesses. It's got to be well developed. So remember our sentence starters. This is a strength because, this is a weakness because. I think on this you only need one strength and one weakness, as long as you develop that and you say this is a strength because, it's a weakness because. And then you've also got to have evidence. So at some point in this, you've got to be talking about research that either supports or disproves the levels or stages of morality that you're talking about in your answer. I'm not going to go through the mark scheme, honestly. I've put this on the document that's available to you on Google Classroom for you to have a look through. I suggest that when you're writing this, you pause the video at this slide or have this slide open on the PowerPoint just to help you. What I've included here is some keywords that I think you should be including throughout this essay. I've summed up what the mark scheme is asking from you, which is what we've just discussed on the previous slides, and then I've written a success criteria there for you to make sure that your answer is hitting everything that a level 3 would need. Just to be clear on this one, I think it's quite obvious in the question here that it wants you to talk about pre-conventional, conventional and post-conventional morality, which means that I think that the main bit that this is talking about really is Coburg's theory. So that will be the main body of your essay. However, if you can see links here to Piaget or to Damon's theory, by all means include those in your essay as well. You've just got to be really clear with your justification as to where those links are and to what aspects of Piaget or Damon that you can see within this essay, and there's not wrong whatsoever if you do that. I've included the examiner's report into the document that I've sent you so you can see an example answer to this and you can see why the examiner gave it the mark it did and what it needed to do to improve. What I want you to do now is I want you to really review that document that I've given you, and I want you to plan this essay. So I want you to plan what you're going to put in paragraph 1, paragraph 2, paragraph 3, and where's your conclusion. And then I want you to time yourself writing this essay, and I want you to give yourself no more than 15 minutes once you've done that plan to write the essay. And again, you can leave this slide on the screen while you do it. The reason I'm saying that is in your exam, you will not have longer than 15 minutes to write this essay, and you've got to start getting used to those time constraints. So review the information, plan the essay, and then put a timer on 15 minutes, time the essay, and then submit it to me, and I'll mark it over Easter for you. Okay, guys, thank you. Just a final note, make sure you look out for your Easter homework as well. I'll be putting that on the Google Classroom. It'll be to revise with materials that I've given you to support your revision, ready for your assessment, which I'm going to be giving you as soon as we're back after Easter. And it'll be on the whole of research methods, as always, and the whole of development of this topic that we've studied since January. Any questions, email me as usual. Thank you.